Welcome to 247 Real Talk. Welcome to the 250th episode of the 247 Real Talk podcast. It is my humble and absolute pleasure to be here with you for this episode. It is Thursday, May 1st at 10:42 p.m. as I look at the clock. Usually, as you know, I record on Wednesdays. But this is another week I'm late because yesterday I was simply too tired to give you as much as I needed to give you of me for this 250th episode. What I'm going to cover for this short but hopefully informative episode is a reflection. I'm going to look back on when this started, what we covered in the past a little bit, talk about the past, the present, and what the future looks like for the 247 Real Talk podcast. So sit back, relax, and I'll be right back. So welcome back, 247 Real Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Julian Perry again. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you. I know I have allergies. I know I blink a lot. I see it on the YouTube videos. It might be a little worse tonight. I had an infection in my left eye the past week, and I'm taking antibiotics. And right now it's irritating a bit because I have a fan on in here. It's a little warm with all the equipment. But this is the 250th episode, and I am absolutely humbled to be here with you and to share my thoughts with you. And to go down memory lane a bit and talk about where we are and what's to come. First off, as I always tell you, I continue my rehab on my knees. My left knee continues to get worse. My right knee that was totally replaced continues to get better. That's the sort of full synopsis of it. So I want to reflect on, let's talk about COVID. And why COVID is so significant is COVID was a bit of part of the catalyst that launched the 247 Real Talk podcast. I remember it was March of 2020, and I was in the office and we were hearing about COVID and the office started emptying out. I remember us waiting to get directions from upper management, and nothing was forthcoming, and I kept hearing of the people getting sick, and by then we started hearing of the daily deaths. And I made a personal choice that I'm not going back into the office. I had remote access. I had the ability to do my job, much as I do now as I recover from my surgery. And I said, no, this is not for me. That must have been about the Tuesday of that week. And the reason why it's significant is at the time my wife was working at a hospital in Queens that turned out to be ground zero to have patient one for the spread of the infection in Queens, or at least that part of Queens. And I remember she interacted with that patient in the emergency room, came home, got a call from her job to go back to be tested, I can't remember if it was tested. I remember what they did, but I believe it was to be tested because they had confirmed patient one and the fact that she had interacted with him. And lo and behold, she came back. She tested positive for COVID. Now, I'm not sure if it was the kind of test we do today, or if it was tested the symptoms that suggested. I really don't recall. I don't think there was a test yet. It was basically she had all the symptoms. So she came home. There we are in our apartment with two young kids. And I think she got called in on a Tuesday. I think by the Thursday, I was sick. I had it a lot worse than she did. I remember they had given a directive that from the hospitals that you should keep holding your breath. And if you couldn't hold your breath for more than, I think it was either 10 or 30 seconds, something like that, you should rush to the hospital. I remember getting fevers of 104, 106, 107. I remember her basically pushing me into the bathtub to lower my temperature. I remember the scary, scary times. And I remember sitting on the sofa with my phone, with the stopwatch on my phone, and every 10, 15 minutes, especially with the fevers, holding my breath to make sure that I could hold it as long as possible, to make sure I was nowhere near that threshold. Not sure what I would have done. There's nothing I could have done if it did happen, right? Those are the days when if you got it that bad and you went to the hospital, you were gonna die. Nothing they were doing was working. They would intubate you and eventually you would die. I remember my wife looking at me and saying, "You're having difficulty breathing, huh?" And I looked at her and said, "No." And I did have difficulty breathing, but it never got to the extent where I couldn't hold my breath for at least a minute, albeit with some struggle. I remember it lasting for about 7, 8 days of that fever. And I was taking every 4 hours, switching back and forth, 4 hours Tylenol, 4 hours ibuprofen, 4 hours Tylenol, which is Tylenol is acetaminophen, right? And eventually the fever broke. I remember calling my PCP or contacting him online. And he said, yes, every symptom I had suggested I had COVID. There was no test, like I said. I remember him telling me that he had patients who were 35 years old, healthy as an ox, came in to see him, and the next day they dropped dead. It was an incredible thing. It was a time of uncertainty. I do reflect back and remember that I don't know how you describe long COVID, but I had COVID symptoms for about 9 months, meaning I had pains in my back and my body, and my doctor treated me for about 9 months with different medications to help. My wife lost her sense of smell and taste for about 6 months. But it was during that time or shortly thereafter that as I was going through this process of working from home, we were all scrambling to figure out how to get all employees out of business and home and functioning with having equipment and having internet access and all these things. Having at the time we were using, what were we using? But I think we were using Zoom maybe, but we switched to Teams. And I sat there and I said, look at what the world's going through. I'm watching TV every day. I'm watching Governor Cuomo at the time give updates all through the day. And at the end of the day, or at some point or next morning, I remember it was give us a count of 800 died yesterday, 900 died yesterday, 1,000, and it was ridiculous. This was day in and day out. And I felt the pressure of it. At the same time, I remember that this was a time when Black Lives Matter there were different things happening around the nation. And I remember and I'm thinking back, so forgive me if I pause, but I remember thinking, what can I do to help? I've gotten all these thoughts in my head. I know there are others out there who have these thoughts. We're isolated. Many of us don't know each other. Many of us are dealing with sickness, losing loved ones, losing breadwinners, losing both parents, losing siblings. It was sparing children at that time, right? Even throughout the end of it, it didn't take. Children had the least amount of numbers, and I had 2 young kids in my house who never got it. But I remember thinking, how can I help? And I decided I was going to start a podcast. I remember my first episodes talking about, I think it was BLM and mental health and self-care. If I remember correctly, at that time, I was not doing a monologue. I was hosting guests, I believe I had Kiara McFarlane who came on, someone I mentor from my church who came on and talked about self-care. I had a Minister Lawrence who was someone from my church as a guest. I had Motanya Gladden, who's been on here 3 times, who's an activist, a great friend of mine and a great friend of the show, and probably my #1 supporter. And then from there on, I figured out how to go online and book guests, and I was off to the races. For the next few years, I had a guest almost every week, many of whom I'm still in touch with. I had guests who talked about mental health. I had guests who talked about from the LGBTQI community who talked about, how their parents treat them and coming out. There's one particular guest. She used to be on my Facebook, and I haven't seen her for a while. I lost touch with her, but she was a great guest. I had several of those. I had, like I said, mental health people. I had behavioral people. And over the years, I've touched on so many different topics, and I want to run them down real quick to you. I had a doctor on here who talked about women's infertility and in vitro fertilization. I had my friend Terry Tucker, who I haven't spoken to in the last few months, and I hope he's well, who has an amazing outlook on life despite battling a rare and incurable form of cancer for years and losing limbs and still standing strong. I have Rima, I won't get her name. I forgot her name, and I'll have to have her back on the show, where she dealt with child trafficking. I had a few people on here who talked about worry. I have a few people who talking about kidnapping. I have one young lady who still keeps in contact who was kidnapped and released 4 days later. She was abused, raped, but they never found her kidnapper, even though she felt the town that she was in, they knew. I had Eric Roberts on, who's the brother of Julia Roberts, who told us all about her career and the fact that he actually launched it. I had, I forgot the producer and an actor from a show, I forgot the name of the show now, a TV show that was really good. It was about the guy stuck in an elevator and his life going before him. I had, like I said, mental health. I've had financiers, people who teach you about saving money, building wealth. I've had lawyers on here for immigration. I've had criminal justice conversation. I've had conversations about activism. I've had conversations with people, several who lost their child to murder, talking about the personal experience, talking about the court case. One of them was committed by a law enforcement person in their town. I had one guy came on, talked about, not about the incident itself, but he talked about his whole story from the time he got the knock on the door telling him that his son had been murdered, and the trial and what they had to do to keep their family together. I've had guests on here who from down south who are Caucasian, but they are not racist, not prejudiced. And they talked about how they were raised to be prejudiced and what they had to do to break that stigma, to break out of that kind of hateful relationship. I've had people who talked about being adopted, black people into white families, put up for adoption because their mother was with a white guy, and once the baby was born, they didn't want a black baby, and the father forced the mother to drop the child off at some home. There have been so many episodes. We've covered so many things, behavioral sciences. And what I've learned over this time of 250 episodes is there is never something not to talk about. There's never enough talk. I've called on all of you to become activists and to fight for a cause, to make a difference. Most recently, we've talked about the power of your dollar and the impact you've had on Walmart and Target and Amazon and Lowe's and all these companies who have decided to follow suit with this administration and abolish their DEI practices. DEI practices that not only help people of color, people who have been wrongfully targeted because of their color, gender, ethnicity, from the LGBTQI community, but also on the understanding of what DI actually supported: handicapped people, blind people, people with illnesses, cancer research. It goes way beyond. We've talked about how the names of history of people of color being removed from military cemeteries and from the military, and they're trying to remove from schools. We talked about how they're trying to rewrite the history books to remove slavery and the black history and gender history, the history of women and women's rights. We've talked about abortion. We've gone through 2 elections. We've looked at where we are now and how our world has changed. And when I started 250 episodes ago, I would never have guessed that I'd be sitting here having a conversation in an America that looked the way it is. We talked so many times about immigration and how immigrants have helped us and how we're all immigrants. Don't care if you were born here, your parents were born here, your grandparents were born here, your great-grandparents were born here. You look back far enough, you're an immigrant, or you're the offspring of an immigrant. And what I've learned is that hosting a podcast is more than the equipment. And we haven't talked about that. We haven't talked about if you want to host something that has decent audio, decent video, the investment it takes. And most podcasts monetize. And I've been asked why not, and I've been pushed to monetize, meaning accept sponsors. But I've always wanted 247 Real Talk to be pure, my pure thoughts, reaction to your input and your feedback, honesty, independence, that even if we talk Democrat or Republican, I talk about it from an independent perspective. And when I say independent, I mean void of political bias or partisanship. And I never want someone else to come and say, I'm going to give you a few dollars and you're going to change your message. You're going to not be going so hard on this. You're going to stop doing that. It's not in keeping with their image. This is the 247 Real Talk podcast image. But there's been a downside to that. I remember one time I had my recorder that tapes this image like I'm doing right now go bad. And overnight, I had to just shell out, almost $1,000 for a new recorder. There have been times where mics have gotten bad. That's why I have probably 12 different microphones. So I have a main one. I have probably 11 backups. I have maybe 4 cameras. Even though I give you one angle, I'm capable of giving multiple angles. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So I'm hoping that over the 250 episodes, or 249, this being the 250th, that you've found value in my show. That you've either found entertainment, you've either found education, but you've always found it to be thought-provoking. Thought-provoking enough that it has made you think enough to listen to the next episode. There are times like now where I hit a wall where my subscribers are not growing as I would like them to, which is kind of strange. I guess if I were monetizing, they probably would. But at least the subscribers I have are organic. And that's the YouTube subscribers I'm talking about, because my audio version of this podcast is, I think, about to hit 50,000 downloads. That's not a huge number for anyone that's doing social media, but for me, who started with 0, 0, 0 in every category. And if you recall, this YouTube version is only 100 and some episodes in. So the first 130 almost episodes were all audio. We never talked face-to-face on camera. I didn't have the equipment. I didn't have the money to buy it at times. And I wasn't brave enough. I didn't feel confident enough to sit in front of a camera. I remember having a guest of mine, and I'm going to call her name, Ilana Dennis. These are people who have been around and know me for decades. She would listen to my podcast, and she said to me one day, "You've grown." I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "I listened to your first episode. I listen to you now. I can hear your growth." I never thought that growth would end up putting me in front of a camera. But I remember doing interviews for something around COVID time for my church. And I did it using Zoom, and the videos were published on the church website. And I realized I can do this. Over time, I've changed cameras. I've done all different things to try to make this better. My most recent venture is moving out of this space. And I can tell you, I'm very honest with you. I bought this house. Um, my kids have rooms upstairs. This was the extra bedroom. I said, no, I'm not. This is not going to be a guest bedroom. This is going to be my studio. So it wasn't built as a studio. It doesn't have the kind of insulation in the walls, the soundproofing, the all that stuff to give me what I want. The dark ceiling, the things I need to give me the correct lighting. But I may do. I've got black curtains. I've got this podcast logo sign behind me that actually covers a window. But then I had a relative come to live with us, and my kids had to share a room, and they're getting old, and I said, well, I've got to make this right. So I'm turning this back into the bedroom that it once was, that was converted to a studio. And I'm building a brand new studio on the lower level, building it with these two hands. And it's being built from scratch with the concept of office studio. So hopefully the experience will be noticeable. I know for me it will. It will be quieter. It will have better sound deflection and absorption. It should have the right lighting and the ability to dim every light in the room and surround me. It'll have cameras in the right positions. And hopefully it will add value to what's to come in the future. I'm still probably a few months away from moving down there. The building of the space is almost down. I probably done. I want to probably say within the next 3 weeks I'll be done. But then the wiring, and you guys have no idea looking at me. There are probably 80 different network cables that I have to relocate and use some kind of ingenuity to get out of this room and extended it down into the lower level to my new space. I won't go into all the details, but it's a lot of work. It will take me time. But I will let you know when I'm sitting in my new space, and you probably will notice the difference in the decor. So where we are today is dealing with conversations about the current administration, the effect it's had on people, the ability it's given white supremacy to come out of the closet, the impact it's had on people who have come here to work, immigrants, people who have been here and have followed the law and maybe missed an interview or something, have gotten deported, families ripped apart. The tariffs that have caused many people, I know one person, to go back to work because their 401k tanked and they didn't have money to take advantage like the billionaires of when the market tanked, and now they have to work for a few more years to rebuild their 401k, and they're retirement age people. The overall atmosphere with tens of thousands of fellow workers losing their jobs and people struggling, prices going up, a tariff war that we don't know where it will end, who will cave in, how much it will hurt us. This disdain in our capital of this great nation for us, the people of color, people of women. And I have to tell you, the election surprised me only because I was sure that the abortion issue would make women stand up for themselves. It was an eye-opener to see how many women were willing to be subservient to men making decisions about their bodies and not overwhelmingly standing up for themselves. That was a surprise to me. I was pretty sure that was basically the deciding factor, and it wasn't. So things happen, the world changes, but I remind all of you who feel overwhelmed at times and feel like you're losing hope and self-esteem that none of this is a surprise to God. For those of you who are like me or who are spiritual, you know what I'm saying. For those of you who are not and are still good people, you know about hope, you know about dreams, you know about doing the right thing. And that's something that we need to keep doing. I'm looking down because there's something I'm going to read to you in a moment. But to come will be a new space. To come will be hopefully a continued message that you enjoy. Hopefully growth in the subscribers and the channel. I am not 100% sure whether I'm going to go back to guests. I will probably wire my new studio when I do the wiring to better accommodate the cameras and angles and guests. Whenever I've had guests in here, I've had to set up a rig, and maybe I won't do it that way this time. I'm not sure. But I do know that I'm looking forward to what's to come. I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you on my 300th episode and to tell you how much the world has changed for the better. We must be optimistic. We must have hope. For those of you who are like me, who believe in who you are and whose you are, you know that God is faithful. I stand here or sit here today as a testimony of someone who started something, not knowing where they were going or how they would do it, but for God. I often tell you that this I do and the sacrifice I make each week in the midst of the business of my life is the price I pay for occupying a space on this earth. It is my give back. It is my give to you. It is my hope that you hear me and you're empowered, that something makes a difference in your life. As I told you last episode, if writing to your senator or your congressman is too much, if protesting by letters or your own social media is too much, then you still have ways to participate. Make an extra effort to pay attention to where you shop and who you give your money to. Make those who are not supporting you and us feel the pain so much that they have to make a choice, lose their profits, have their businesses drop, or stand tall. We've seen it whether I think it was Target lost up to last week $50 or $16 billion. Walmart lost $22 billion. Lowe's did not disclose their number, neither did Amazon. And we've seen recently that Elon Musk is stepping away from his position soon because Tesla stock and Tesla are taking a hit. Their sales have dropped. I don't condone the people who have been angry and burned cars and dealerships, but it does tell you the temperature of what's out there. Many people, when elections came around, felt that it was already decided and chose not to vote. Big mistake. Now you understand how much your vote counts, how much your voice makes a difference, and how you can find ways to participate no matter how busy you are. Stand up for what you believe in. And I say this equally because there are those who voted for this administration, who believe in it, and who are doing what they need to do to stand up for it. There are those who are sorry they did, and they're doing what they need to stand up for it. Those who lost, so to speak, because their candidate didn't win. It's not time to feel despondent, because all of us together, those who voted for or those who voted against, make up this great nation of ours. And if we want it to be a better America for all of us, we need to stand united. We need to find common ground. We need to put humanity first. We need to be honest and fair with ourselves. We need to be concerned about who we are and whose we are. We need to recognize that at the end of this journey, we all end up in the same place. We need to recognize that even though we want to walk around with billions of dollars and flaunt our wealth, that tomorrow really isn't promised. That there's no amount of money or wealth can buy you another day on this earth. Let that sink in. I got a prayer from my pastor this morning. I get one 6 days a week. And I was thinking, as I was reflecting on what this episode would be, and I thought back to 249, now 250 episodes ago. What could have started this? And just as timely as it always is, I got the answer. Ezekiel 36, verse 26. And I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you. I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you. That day when I started my first episode, God gave me a new empowered heart. And he put his spirit in me to rise up and represent his presence on this earth, reminding people that he came and gave his life so that we have a new opportunity to be forgiven and to rise to do the right thing. And we are also accountable on Judgment Day. It has been my absolute pleasure to bring you 250 episodes. And while I said I look forward to the 300th episode, I look forward to the 500th episode as well, which will represent 250 more. No one knows where we will be there then. No one knows who is on here today won't be there tomorrow. No one knows how we will be and what we will look like. But we know one thing for certain: who we are and whose we are. And before I go, I want to give a plug to my church, First Presbyterian Church in Jamaica, Queens, New York. They do so much to help people. This Saturday, they have a cancer screening. Give me a second. I want to pull it up because I think it's important for men. It is the 20th annual prostate cancer screening and health fair, free to the public, Saturday, May 3rd, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at First Presbyterian Church in Jamaica, 8960 164th Street, Jamaica, New York. If you don't have health care, if you have never thought about it, but you're of the age, and for men of color, I say 45 and over, prostate cancer is something that you can beat quite easily if you catch it on time. I've had 2 colonoscopies. My first one found precancerous polyps that were removed during the colonoscopy, and my second one gave me a clean bill of health with a redo of a colonoscopy in 5 years. I'm thankful I'm always proactive about my health. About 2 weeks ago, someone I knew very well, my predecessor in my job, we retired 2 years ago, he dropped dead in his bathroom. He had complained a couple weeks before of when he was walking, taking his daily walks, he'd be short of breath. He didn't rush to the emergency room. He took it lightly and made an appointment with his doctor, an appointment that he never kept and was never able to keep. Pay attention to your health. Places like First Presbyterian Church in Jamaica have annual health fairs, not just for prostate, but for overall health. You get your blood pressure checked, you get advice, you get checked for blood sugar, for diabetes. We need to take care of ourselves. Our bodies are our temple, and you need to take care of your temple. I need to take care of my temple so that I can be here to spend more times like this with you, and you can be there to support this cause. Again, I thank you so much. It has been my humble and absolute pleasure to be here with you for 250 episodes. Special shout out to Motanya Gladden. Special shout out to Eric Roberts. Special shout out to Dr. Campbell. Special shout out to Pastor Patrick O'Connor. Special shout out to Kiara McFarland. There's so many more. I can't list them, but I'm thankful to all of you. I'm humbled for this opportunity. And you're all in my prayers that as we stand together and stand strong together, we shall overcome. And our conversations shall bring change wherever it's needed as we do our part to earn our keep on this earth. Until the next time, be safe, take care of yourselves, and please take care of each other.